Thank you, Mr. Chair. Clean water is a human right, and the health and safety of our communities and the success of our economy depend upon it. And House Democrats stand for clean water, and today I rise to oppose H.J. Res. 27. Last Congress, we passed a bipartisan, once-in-a-generation investment in our nation's infrastructure through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, investing almost $13 billion in clean water infrastructure upgrades and creating jobs in communities across this country. The BIL showed what Congress can do when we focus on the needs of American families. Yet, instead of putting people over pollution, this CRA does the opposite. Now, my state of Washington is defined by its clean water, including the health of the Puget Sound and the hundreds of lakes and thousands of miles of rivers and streams throughout the state. My constituents know that rivers, streams, and wetlands are intrinsically connected. Pollution that starts in one body of water does not stay put. House Democrats believe we can protect clean water while providing certainty to businesses, to farmers, to Americans who depend upon clean water for their lives and livelihoods. This is especially true for the 117 million Americans who depend on smaller streams as a source of their drinking water at a time when many states are facing historic droughts. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle say they want clean water rules that are simple, clear, and easy to follow. I want that too. The Biden administration's Clean Water Restoration Rule does exactly that, following the law and the science of protecting clean water and providing regulatory certainty and stability to the implementation of the Clean Water Act. But this resolution does the opposite. This resolution will not bring back the previous administration's Navigable Waters Protection Rule, which removed federal protections on roughly half of the nation's wetlands and 70% of its rivers and streams. That rule was rightly rejected by a federal court in 2021 as, quote, fundamentally flawed and likely to cause, quote, serious environmental harm. Every day it remained in effect. It is off the table entirely. This resolution before us today will also not eliminate the use of the significant nexus test because that test was mandated by the U.S. Supreme Court. It's been in effect since the Bush administration and remains in place today. However, this rule will adversely impact farmers, ranchers, and developers by creating regulatory chaos and eliminating important exclusions that have been codified in the new rule to help water-dependent businesses and farmers understand and comply with the law. Now, despite fear-mongering on this issue, the truth is simple. The Biden proposal will have no impact on the average family farmer in this country. And why? That's because farmers are, by law, largely exempt from the Clean Water Act permitting requirements, where less than 1% of all annual wetlands permits relate to ag activities nationwide. Therefore, if a farm is engaged in normal farming, forestry, and ranching activity, or undertakes the construction or maintenance of a farm, stock pond, or irrigation ditch, you are exempt from the permitting requirements of the Act, and the current proposal does not change that exemption. Finally, for those waiting to see the Supreme Court will somehow fix this issue in an upcoming Sackett case, this resolution will actually hinder the ability of the Corps and the EPA to respond to the Supreme Court's potential recommendations later this year. That is why this resolution before us makes no sense. It would invalidate the Biden rule and all the clarifications and exceptions it contains in favor of a similarly structured but much less regulatory framework, a much less clear regulatory framework. That's a recipe for uncertainty, legal battles, and continued gridlock, the opposite of what proponents say they are looking for. It also ties the hands of federal agencies seeking to help individuals comply with the law unless Congress acts again. Now, this short-sighted action will lessen, not increase certainty. It's a big mistake. I support the administration's efforts to officially implement the critical water infrastructure investments included in the BIL so we can begin to realize the public health, economic, and environmental benefits that come with clean water. But this resolution represents a giant step backward for clean water, increases uncertainty for farmers, home builders, road builders, and all American families, and doubles down on the infighting and chaos. So I urge my colleagues to join me in opposing HJ Res 27 and to move forward together towards a future with predictability for those that need it, and clean water for communities that cannot survive without it. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlemen.